I get a lot of comments about Section 8 tenants and how destructive they are and how bad they are. And, how dare I put up a YouTube channel to promote this? They're the worst people in the world. They're the scum of the earth. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of bias and a lot of stereotypes surrounding Section 8 tenants. And I'll be lying to you if I hadn't heard them myself before I actually started my investment journey. What I could tell you with 100% certainty that now as an investor, a landlord, someone who actually does it, Section 8 tenants are no different than a cash tenant. What you do as a landlord determines how effective your tenant will be. So in this video, I'm going to break down 5 things that I know for a fact that landlords don't do, but then they cry foul when a Section 8 tenant actually, turns out to be a bad tenant. So I'm going to talk about that in this video. So make sure you watch till the end. There are 5 core things that will separate you from the pack. All right. Cool. So the first thing is this one. This one is important. This is where you purchase a property too big. Okay. When it comes to getting paid with Section 8, there's only 2 factors that matter. That is the number of bedrooms and the zip code. Okay. The number of bedrooms in a 1,200 square foot property versus a 2,400 square foot property is still three, right? So if you find the 2 properties, a 3 bedroom for 1,200 square feet or a 3 bedroom with 2,400 square feet, if you have the full intention of being a landlord and rent Section 8, I will tell you 100 times out of 100 to purchase the property that is 1,200 square feet. Now, again, still needs to be in the same zip code to compare apples to apples. But the reason why you wouldn't want to buy a property that's much larger is important. All right. Okay. So number one, the ROI is going to be higher if you buy a property with smaller square footage. Chances are you're going to pay less for that property. So if I know, let's just say for easy math, the 1,200 square foot property is $100,000, but the 2,400 square foot property is 140,000, and they're both in the same zip code. Why am I going to purchase the 2,400 square foot property if I know the rent will be the same amount for both properties? Okay. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that when you buy properties, and if you watch my channel or you're a part of my program, I always say, let's buy the ugly house. Maybe it's not a tear down, start from scratch house, but we want something that we can actually improve on our own and make sure the work is done right. When you are working with a contractor, what are some of the ways they actually calculate your estimate? Bingo, the square footage. So again, if I know I'm going to get $1,500 a month for a 3 bedroom in this location, wouldn't I want to get a estimate where the estimate is based off of 1,200 square feet or 2,400 square feet? Now, again, we're not flippers. Okay. We're not trying to flip the house. We're trying to rent the house. So you have to be strategic. This is very important. Okay. And then the third reason is when you have a bigger place, okay, there's bigger room, larger room for you to actually care for it or even mess it up. So when I have tenants that, actually move out, um, I don't really lose sleep because I'm like, oh man, I hope they didn't damage this 2,400, 3,000 foot place, right? I'm thinking a more controlled 1,200 square feet is a whole lot more manageable. You know what I'm saying? It's probably going to be a ranch, maybe a split level, or really compact 2 level. It's not a big place, right? It's functional. It serves its purpose for the tenant, but it's not a large place. So even when you hear all these horror stories where people damage the property or whatever, and God forbid that ever happens to one of my properties or yours, when you're dealing with a property that's oh so big, the damage can only be oh so much. You see what I'm saying? So it's important to make sure you buy a property that's functional. And then which goes into my next step, which is that you purchase a property too big first, right? But the next part of the process is making sure that it's in the right neighborhood. So the video I published right before this one is doing really well, right? And I'm getting a lot of feedback and everything about it. And, it's pretty much outlining the fact that, Section 8 is not a location, right? You determine where Section 8 sits, right? It's a voucher. So if your property is in the hood and you accept Section 8, you know what? Your Section 8 property is going to be in the hood. But if you have a property in a blue collar, C class suburban area, and you accept Section 8, guess what? Your property will be in that blue collar suburban C class area, right? So you want to make sure that you do not buy a property in a bad location. Okay. You want to be able to sleep good at night. You want your tenants to feel safe. You want them to feel like this is home. This is somewhere I can actually, feel comfortable inviting guests over if need be. My kids can go to school with no problems. So the rule that I always put out there is that if you would not live there, or if your living standard is much higher at this point, I can respect that. I will say go one step lower. Would you be okay with someone that you love or care about living in this location, living in this rental house, living in this rental unit that you have? If you have any pause about that, then don't buy the property. It's as simple as that. Why would you expect someone to be okay and be proud to live in your place, and if you don't even feel good about living there, or if you don't even feel like someone that you care about would be okay with living there? When you set that standard and that tone, you're already setting yourself up for failure. That's why this is key. Okay. So again, this video is, breaking down all this bias and stereotypes about Section 8. And the more and more I've done this, the more and more I've, networked with other landlords, the more and more I'm certain that the issue is not Section 8. The issue is that these are bad landlords. Okay. So that's the second reason. The third reason, which most people kind of jump into Section 8, and it's an excellent benefit, right? Is that you fell for the guaranteed rent trap, right? And the guaranteed rent is a real thing. I enjoy it every month, right? But the trap is that you didn't screen effectively. Okay. So what Section 8 does, and housing authorities, whether it's public or private institutions, right? They they award vouchers, but they're not in the business of matchmaking you to a tenant. Okay. They will award a voucher. A lot of times, oftentimes it's a lottery, it's definitely income based. But they do some background check with them, but it's limited, right? The buck stops there. You, as the property owner and the landlord, should do your own background excuse me. You do your own background check. You do your own credit check, right? And you look at that dynamic, and also rental history, excuse me. You look at those three factors: their background, do they have any, criminal charges? Do they have a record in any way? What are the charges? For me, anything other than speeding tickets, it's a no for me. It's a no. We tickets, parking tickets, speeding tickets, I'll give you a pass, right? But if you have anything on your record outside of that, I'm good. Okay. I'm comfortable with saying that. I don't have anything on my record. I want someone in there that I can at least know that this person hasn't been in jail. Okay. I think that's a pretty acceptable standard, and I'm okay with that, right? Do people make mistakes? Absolutely. But again, what I'm in the business of doing is risk mitigation. Okay. I live in Atlanta. My properties are in Cleveland. I want to be able to sleep good at night, knowing that I'm hundreds of miles away from my properties. And that's one extra thing that I don't have to worry about is that I have someone who I'm renting to that has a record. So I check that off. Then credit history. Oh, but Moses, why do you need to check their credit if they get guaranteed rent? Ah, see, you fell for the guaranteed rent trap. Okay. You screen your tenants just like you would screen a cash paying tenant. Do not fall for it. So, your minimum credit score, let's just say it's 600. Okay. 600 or more, 550. Maybe you want to go to 650. Whatever you want to do, you want to make sure you have a standard. My personal standard is 600. Okay. 600 doesn't mean you have great credit. It just means you have fair credit. Okay. And the reason why I go to fair is because I do have that layer of guaranteed rent. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to say, oh, you have to have excellent credit because it's like, do they need excellent credit? Not really, because they have Section 8 paying either all or most of the rent. But I do want them to have some skin in the game, making sure that they show some responsibility financially before I open the floodgates for them to live in my property. Okay. Also, when someone has a credit score, you can, match it up to say, hey, this person had show some responsibility that if they buy something or if they break something, they'll pay it back. Right. So if you look at someone's credit score, I don't care if they have a Section 8 voucher, right? And their credit score is in the 400s or low fives. It's like, no, the guaranteed rent is not enough because this person has shown that they get something and don't take care of it. They get something, don't take care of it. They sign up for something, they don't honor it. Okay. So again, you cannot fall for the Section 8 guaranteed rent trap. You still have to vet their criminal record and then their credit history. Okay. But then this is another one that many landlords don't do. They won't reach out to the prior landlord. Ah, okay. Why? Why is that? Because you fell for the guaranteed rent trap. Okay. You don't do that. You reach out to the landlord. Okay. You make sure that it is truly the landlord. Okay. You can do, because sometimes people will say, hey, can you act like you're my landlord? Da, 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 da. Oh, I've been living with my sister for 2 years. That's probably a red flag. You know what I'm saying? Like, find someone who is currently living in a Section 8 unit where you can speak to the landlord. Or, there are some times where people are homeless temporarily or whatever, and you can't reach like a direct landlord. But again, give me some type of comfort where I can reach someone that can speak to your behalf on how well you actually maintain a property, right? And when you speak to that landlord, ask him direct questions. Okay, is there a reason why he or she is not looking to stay in your unit? Is there a reason why? Um, well, let me ask this: like, hey, have they ever missed a payment? Because again, Section 8 doesn't always cover 100%. It all depends on if that person has a job, right? Most of the times they do, but some people have steady income and they pay a portion of it. So, and that also changes. So you can get recertified. You can bring someone on board and they pay nothing, right? But then a year later, they get recertified and now they are responsible for $300. So you see what I'm saying? So if you were just falling for the guaranteed rent trap for year one, but you didn't determine if this person had good pay history, now a year later, you're going to get the guaranteed rent from Section 8, but you're chasing down to $300 a month. You see what I'm saying? So you got to make sure you bring someone in that has the mindset to take care of your property and pay you on time, even if it's not their financial responsibility at that moment to do so. Okay. I hope that makes sense, right? So don't fall for the trap. So those three things: background check, essentially criminal history, um, the credit check, making sure it's acceptable. It doesn't have to be superb, it needs to be acceptable. And then number three, the rental history. Okay. Most landlords that accept Section 8 don't do this. All right. Next, number four. Okay. And make sure you are watching this whole video. Okay. This is a huge one. Okay. So we started off with making sure we bought the right size property. So that helps mitigate costs, right? We put it in the right neighborhood, so now our tenant feels better. Okay, the neighborhood is less susceptible to theft, crime of any sort. Not that it completely avoids it, but it's not like stricken with crime. Then we took the time to vet the tenant by checking their criminal, credit, rental history. Now it's like, okay, man, we got the right size property, we got it in the right neighborhood, we got the right type of mindset of a tenant that we want. Oh, okay. What else is missing? A security deposit. I can't tell you how many people assume just because it's Section 8 that you cannot get a security deposit. You would be dead wrong. You absolutely can get a security deposit and you should require it every single time. Now, for the most part, it's going to be 1 month's rent. Okay. If you have someone that you still feel a little bit uneasy with, you have the right, depending on your state. Now, I invest in Ohio. There's no limit to security deposit, but you have to be realistic. If someone could pay 5 times a security deposit, they probably wouldn't be on Section 8. Okay. What I typically see happens is that depending on the program, and again, this is subject to government funding or private funding or whatever, um, they will cover or help cover at least 1 month's rent for the landlord, right? But again, you have to request it. But just because someone's on Section 8, they might get a tax return, they might have been doing their own savings or whatever. They probably have the ability to pay you a security deposit as well. But again, you can't get into whether or not they can or not. You set your own standard. And if your standard is 1 month security deposit or 1.5 month security deposit, even if that person is, 700 credit score, clean background check, if that person cannot satisfy that security deposit, you know what you do? You decline that applicant. That's what you do. You decline the applicant. You're not forced to do it. You go through these steps to make sure you have the right person. This is the reason why when I bring people into a house that I own or apartment that I own, when they come in, they don't leave because I make sure it's the right type of tenant. We're a perfect match. We're like match.com, you know? The Section 8 is not going to match you to the tenant. Okay. So requiring a security deposit, 95% of the time it's going to be 1 month rent. That 5% where you're kind of on the borderline, it's like, if you can do 1.5, I'll accept you. And it's up to them at that point, right? But now you see how we've protected ourselves. We got the right size home, right location, the right person. If they were to go ham and just destroy the place, we have a security deposit in place. Which leads me to the last reason, number 5, why landlords suck. You know, I could say that in most cases I run into where people down Section 8 tenants, it's because the landlords suck. Okay. And this right here is the icing on the cake that makes landlords suck. It's because they don't address maintenance requests, they don't tend to repairs, they let the house fall, crumble because they bought it with ill intentions and they threw a Section 8 tenant in there because they said, They don't want nothing better. They're poor, they're this, they're that. They would never do these things to a cash tenant, but they feel comfortable to do it to a Section 8 tenant. And this is where you go wrong. This is where you go wrong. Because the energy that you bring, right? If you show that you don't care about your property, what's going to happen? The tenant is not going to care about your property. That is 100% fact. If you show you don't care, then they won't care. So what happens to do it the right way is that when there's a maintenance request, you tend to it in a reasonable time frame, right? Hey, um, I'm having a leaky faucet. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, well, I'll get somebody out there as soon as possible. Soon as possible, you communicate back with them, whether you're self-managing or whatever. Now, this is a problem too. Maybe someone hired a property manager and they suck. That's why I'm not a fan of hiring property managers. I self-manage and I use a software called Hemlane, Hemlane, and I could show you how to do repair coordination. Make sure you tap into me and watch my trainings, reach out to me for one-on-one coaching. But essentially, you have that communication going, you take care of the issue. Now, what if you keep having maintenance issues? It's possible. Someone's, the toilet keeps backing up. You have a firm but fair conversation with that tenant. You're going to say, hey, Jessica, um, I want to make sure that for as long as you're a tenant in my home, that things are working in a satisfactory way because I want to make sure you're safe and I want to make sure that my property is in great shape. However, I've been noticing more than usual maintenance requests related to, XYZ. I do want to tell you that I've appreciated you being a tenant here, but I want to let you know that the compounding of these maintenance requests is going to impact whether or not I will renew your lease. Okay. So you're telling them in a nice way, I'm going to take care of this property because this is my property. This is my investment and I want to make sure it's safe. But if you keep doing ba da 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 da, you leave me no choice but to not renew your lease. Okay. When I've done that, you'll be surprised how that course correct behavior. You'll be surprised when they say, "Oh man, he's not like everybody else," right? Because they become more careful. They become like the mayor of your property. They say, "Oh," they get with their kids and say, "Hey, make sure don't put no hair in the drain." Oh, they are very attentive to how the property is maintained. Okay, you become a differentiator. You become a gold mine to someone who has a Section 8 voucher because 99% of the other landlords won't speak to them in that way. They won't take care of the property, and you just become a roof over their head. Whereas the way I teach my students is that I teach them to create a home, right? And that becomes a win win win. It's a win for you because you're getting consistent rent. The tenant don't leave. It's a win for the tenant because they have a quality home, and it's a win for the government because they don't have to worry about housing, the homeless. This is someone that probably would be homeless or, you know, in really bad shape if they didn't have a voucher. So this is a win-win-win, right? So when you hear people say things about Section 8 in a negative fashion, I want you to send them this video because I guarantee you if they were doing these 5 things that I just walked through, they wouldn't have a negative, connotation at all towards Section 8 tenants. They will be raking in the dough like I do, okay? So, again, share this video, like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I just really appreciate your support. Drop your comments, let me know if I'm wrong. I'm open to dialogue, but I look forward to talking to you soon, and I'm out. Peace.